Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Thursday Night Live. It's good to see you all in here. Man, everyone has beaten me in here tonight. That's great. We've got a good number of people in. I'm looking at the screen, by the way, to see if I can read the names of some of the folk in. We always like to show some appreciation to people who come in early. First in, it looks like at least into the chat. With Susan and Colin. That's great. Good to see you all. And there's Leo. Nice to see you, Leo. Glad you could make it in. Let's see, who else? Alan and Angeline. Hello there. Who else? That's Mark and Angela and Jacob. I'm getting new glasses soon, folks. Never buy those coatings on your glasses, because if you hold on to your glasses as long as I do, the coating starts to peel away, and it's like you're looking through constant clouds. It's like living in Scotland. But hopefully I'll make it through tonight anyway. Who else do we have in here? Linda, good to see you, Linda. Dieter as well. Hello there. Going down through the list. Of course, Karen and Margaret and David are in. Let's see, I think that might be it on the list for right now, but of course we know there are others. Marlene's listening. She's feeling better. Looking forward to getting her back in church. I let her know that we missed her today. Avshin and Bella should be back this week. I think this is the week that they're going to be back with us in services, so that's going to be a real blessing. And there we do have others. Helga is always watching, either on the night, or if not on the night, she'll be there the following day. And that's why we record it, isn't it? Because it doesn't suit everyone, but we certainly do manage to get a lot of people. Well, we have a big chapter tonight, chapter 7 of the book of Exodus. And we're looking at both the first miracle and the first plague to hit Egypt. And hopefully we'll get some things out of tonight's lesson, especially at the very end, as we talk about Pharaoh's hardened heart. But anyway, let's start off at a good place, which is the beginning. We'll start off at Exodus chapter 7, beginning verse 1. We're going to look through verses 1 through 5 just to begin with. And the Lord said unto Moses, See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, that he send the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and multiply my signs by my wonders in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt, and bring forth mine armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I stretch forth mine hand upon Egypt, and bring out the children of Israel from among them. But we'll stop right there for just a moment. Notice in chapter 5 the use of the word Lord in all caps. You'll recall from our study last time, this is the word Jehovah, which it speaks of the self-existent God. That is, he has no creator. He is because he is. And in other words, I am that I am. And so God has said, the Egyptians shall know that I am Jehovah. That is, that I'm self-existent. There's none other than me, because they're going to see things that they have not seen, and nor will they see again the great works of the Lord as he pours them out upon Egypt. And what's about to happen in Egypt will be spread abroad throughout the nations of Canaan and all around the world as they find out the wonders of the God that looks after the Hebrews. So let's look at a few things here from these first 5 verses. Uh, uh, I like the fact, first of all, that this is reiterated to Moses, and also by nature, of course, on to Aaron. God over and over again is teaching Moses. So he's explained himself to Moses, but now he's teaching Moses. He's showing Moses that what he said initially is still his will. You know, when you go into battle as a soldier, you don't just get issued a gun and some army clothing and thrown into battle. That does not happen. What happens is you are usually drafted, or you volunteer. You go into basic training. You go into boot camp, and they teach you to be a soldier. They teach you how to use your gun. They teach you how to do battle. And so God was showing Moses over and over again that this was his will. It was not changing. And these things were becoming ingrained into Moses' mind. How many times did God say to Moses, you know, uh, you have these signs, that you're going to show before Pharaoh. You have these powers, but I'm going to harden his heart. So Moses should not be taken aback by anything that happens. Now we know that Moses has already gone into Pharaoh and asked him to release the children of Israel. He went in there with Aaron, and the response from Pharaoh was this: "Who do you think you are, Moses and Aaron, keeping your nation, the Israelites, from their work? Go and do the things that you're commanded to do." So he did not listen. This was exactly what God said would happen. And of course, as with all the promises of God, they come to pass. So Moses is being very well set up. This, again, the theme is that God, Jehovah, is going to speak with Moses. Moses will then speak to Aaron, who is functioning as his prophet, the spokesperson in the arrangement, and finally, then Aaron will speak to Pharaoh and will convey the things that have been conveyed to Moses. So you see, there's an order of things that are done here. But more than just this order, there's also a proper order beyond that. So you, Moses, shall speak as I command you. That's what God said. Aaron, your brother, shall speak to Pharaoh. That goes without saying. But God has a part in this as well, of course. He's the one going with Moses. Remember when Moses said, "Who am I that I should lead the nation out of their bondage? Who am I? I'm nothing." And God said, "Of course, I will go with thee." And he did. And we talked about that before. That rock that followed them was Christ, we find in the book of Hebrews. Well, God says, "I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and I will increase my signs and wonders in Egypt." So this was God's part. God is going to harden the heart of Pharaoh so that he might work his miracles amongst the Egyptians, hardening one man's heart to open the eyes of a whole nation of people. Pharaoh, he says, will not hearken to you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt, that I may bring you forth with great judgments. Bring who forth? Well, he speaks of the nation of Israel in 3 terms. He calls them my armies, my people, and the children of Israel. All 3 terms are correct. And you may think that Israel is not much of an army, but they will very soon be formed into their bands and armies. And that's what God was doing. He was bringing them out and preparing them for the battles that lie ahead. They're going to have to go into the land of Canaan and to subdue that country. They're going to have to be an army. So God's going to teach them. He's going to bring them through boot camp. But they're also the people of God. Remember, God dwelt with them in the tabernacle. He dwelt among his people. He was part of that nation. And lastly, they were the children of Israel, referring to Jacob, whose name was Israel, of course, changed by God. Prince with God was Jacob. And lastly, the Egyptians had a part in all of this. So here's the order. The final step is the Egyptians. They shall know that I am Jehovah, God says. When I will stretch forth my hand against Egypt, they will know that I am Jehovah. And also when I bring out the children of Israel from among them, they shall know that I am Jehovah. And so this was the order of things. Now we'll find out if Moses and Aaron stick to the order of things. Well, Moses and Aaron are mentioned in verses 6 and 7. It says, and Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them. That's always a good thing to do, isn't it? To do as you are commanded. And, you know, all of the sacrifices and offering are great, but to obey, to hear and obey is the greatest thing for the children of God. And they command, as the Lord commanded them, so they did. It says, and Moses was 80 years old, or 80 years old, and Aaron was 83 years old when they spake unto Pharaoh. So now you might, you know this distinction. The brother of Moses was 3 years older than he was. Well, we are now approaching on to that first sign. That is the first sign that God is going to give to Pharaoh and to those of his court. Pardon me. That he is God. Just have a quick drink here. It's good to have that. Always refreshing. All right. So the first sign, as you recall, this was given back to Moses a long time ago. Aren't you glad? Moses is about to turn the staff, or known as the rod of God. He's going to turn the staff into a serpent. And then he's going to grab the serpent by the tail, and it's going to become a staff again. Aren't you glad that this was something that Moses got to practice? I bet Moses was. I bet Moses was glad that God, at the burning bush, put him into basic training on how to show this sign and this wonder. He said, cast down the rod that's in your hand. And when he did, it became a serpent, and he ran back from it, remember? And God told him, go up and grab it by the tail. And he did so, and it became his rod again. So Moses had practice at this. So now in front of Pharaoh, he's not going to look like an unpracticed 80-year-old child. He's going to look like a man that God has called, a man that God has given certain abilities and gifts to. And so, you see, God always outfits the person that he's going to use with what they need. Moses didn't have every gift. He wasn't a great man in all respects, but he was very meek, and God had put him through his paces. He had learned that meekness throughout his life. Well, we read in verses 8 through 10 that Moses and Aaron did indeed follow that order of things that we mentioned. It says here in verse 8, and the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, show a miracle for you, then thou shalt say unto Aaron, take thy rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. And Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh, and they did so as the Lord had commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. So you see, they followed the order. God spoke to Moses and told him what to do. Moses conveyed that to Aaron, who was functioning as his prophet, or the one who was his mouthpiece. Remember how Moses had said, I'm a man of uncircumcised lips. He said, I'm not a good speaker. You know that. And God said, Aaron, your brother speaks well. And so Moses had his prophet, his spokesperson in Aaron. So he conveyed it to Aaron, and then Aaron actioned it in front of Pharaoh and his servants. It says, and he did so as the Lord commanded, and Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Now, we're going to talk about this in just a moment, but I want to share with you the fact that the sorcerers were allowed to do the same. Verse 11, then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, now the magicians of Egypt. They also did in like manner with their enchantments, for they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. Now, this is interesting, I guess, an interesting thought experiment. There's no mention here of how that the sorcerers were able and magicians were able to make their rods become serpents. But nevertheless, they did. Now, to my mind, there's probably two options here. If it was done by the incantations of the sorcerers and magicians, the sort of wise men of Egypt, I guess, if you want to look at it that way, it could have been a trick. But I don't think that it is a trick, because as we see, Aaron's rods swallowed up their rods. So there's some idea amongst some that, they had the rod in their hands, but by some sleight of hand, they pretended to throw the rod down, but threw down a serpent instead. Seems highly unlikely to me. The second option, of course, is perhaps these people were given the ability to do such wonders by Satan himself. That is, that he was allowed to perform these miracles in a limited sense in order that the might and the power of God might be shown, i.e., in that Moses' rod swallowed, or Moses' serpent swallowed the serpents of the sorcerers and magicians. And third, there's a possibility that it was God, that God permitted the actions of the magicians and sorcerers to actually produce a miracle, that the miracle that they performed was not actually performed by them, but was allowed by God and permitted by God through his power to do two things: to harden the heart of Pharaoh, but also to show the superiority of Moses and Aaron by Moses' rod swallowing up, or Moses' snake serpent swallowing up the serpents of the magicians. There's some interesting information that I found out. So there's three options. What do I believe? Well, it's pretty hard to be definitive on it, because it is not mentioned that it was done by God or by Satan. And it certainly doesn't appear that they came by this power through any incantation that they had, and I don't think it was sleight of hand. But one thing that leads me to believe that it might have been permitted by God is this: do you remember the witch of Endor? Do you remember when Saul came to find the witch of Endor? He'd put many witches to death, and so she was afraid of him, if you recall. And he wanted to speak with Samuel, but God had taken his spirit of leadership, which always sat with the kings of Israel. He had taken that spirit off of um, Saul and had given it to David. So Saul no longer had the spirit of God dwelling with him as king. God had rejected him as king. But if you recall, this witch of Endor called out her incantations and called for Samuel to come, and he came. And do you recall that when Samuel responded to the woman, that she was afraid and taken back? She didn't expect anything to happen because they were, for the most part, liars and false prophets and doing things by sleight of hand, so to speak. So perhaps following that line, God did allow this thing to happen at the hands of the sorcerers and magicians. But I mentioned that there was something interesting about this, and the worship of serpents in Egypt is interesting, and the two main types of deities or gods, false gods that they worshipped were interesting. I'm going to read this to you. Ancient Egyptians did worship serpents, though not as a central deity, but as a significant symbol of and divine entities. The serpent was associated with several gods and goddesses, reflecting a dual nature as both a protector and destructive force. The most prominent serpent-related deity was Wadjet, the cobra goddess who symbolized protection and royalty. She was often depicted as a rearing cobra on Pharaoh's crown, and you see this on the carvings around the area. The cobra raised up on the crown of Pharaoh. So it represented the king's divine authority and him safeguarding through Wadjet's help the land from its enemies. But what's interesting is there was another serpent god with a small g that they worshipped. Another key figure was Apep or Apophis, a serpent god of chaos, whom the Egyptians sought to defeat through rituals. As he threatened the order established by the sun god Ra. So you see the two opposing serpents. You had Wadjet, the rearing cobra, the representing the protection for the king and his divine right to rule and the order of his kingdom. But you also had the other god here, which was a god of chaos. I think it was called Apep or Apophis, the serpent god of chaos, who the Egyptians tried to defeat. So they would say that their god was greater than Apophis. But in this case, who knows but what when the magicians and sorcerers threw down their rods, they became cobras, the sign of protection of the king and the divine right to rule and the order of his kingdom being established. And when Aaron threw down Moses' rod, it became not that, but Wadjet, the serpent that they seek to defeat and fear. And so Pharaoh would have sat back and said, all of my cobras against this one serpent. But you know what happens? The serpent of destruction, Wadjet, eats and consumes all of the other serpents. Moses directs Aaron, he grabs it by the tail, and it becomes a rod again. So, what of the divine right to rule? It's all in Moses' rod now. The serpent that the Egyptians seek to defeat has defeated them. What do you think would be the response of Pharaoh to this? Wouldn't this sign strike fear into your heart? That the serpent God with a small g that's meant to protect your kingdom and assure your divine right to rule is overcome by what they consider the evil serpent, the bringer of destruction. Well, it's interesting, but it didn't really seem to make much difference to Pharaoh, because in verse 13 rather, it says, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart, that is, God hardened his heart, that he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. He hardened his heart. That is, Moses couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. The signs were not good. If you were a people, as they were, who lived by signs and rituals and incantations and such things, you would think this would be the thing that would turn them. But God is not finished with the nation of Egypt yet. He yet has many signs to show. So God gave a message to Pharaoh for the hardness of his heart. Verse 14, I'm going to read this to you. So verse 14, and we'll read through for a ways. And the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuseth to let the people go. Get thee unto Pharaoh in the morning. Lo, he goeth out to the water, and thou shalt stand by the river brink against he come. And thou shalt stand by the rivers, and the rod which was turned to a serpent shalt thou take in thy hand, and thou shalt say unto him, the Lord God of the Hebrews hath sent me to thee, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto thou wouldest not hear. Thus saith the Lord, in this thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Behold, I will smite with the rod that is in mine hand upon the waters which were in the river, and they shall be turned to blood, and the fish that is in the river shall die, and the river shall stink, and the Egyptians shall loathe to drink of the water of the river. So you see, God was bringing about his first judgment upon the nation of Israel, his first plague, if you will. And it was to come upon the river. Now, it doesn't mention specifically the Nile, but it stands to reason that this was one of the rivers that, the main river flowing through Egypt from top to bottom. We're going to just look at it as if it is, because it makes sense that it would be the Nile River. Some interesting things here as well. But let's read verses 20 through, the actual event itself. So again, Moses and Aaron are obedient. Verse 20. And Moses and Aaron did so as the Lord commanded. And he lifted up the rod and smote the waters that were in the river in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants. And all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. And the fish that was in the river died, and the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink the water of the river. And there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. It seems that every pot, every vessel that had been filled with water out of the river had been turned to blood. Not just the river itself, but every vial that had water in it, it was turned to blood. Well, it might not surprise you, as superstitious as they were, that the Egyptians revered the Nile River, right? They looked upon it as a sacred entity. Though they did not worship it directly as a god, they associated it with the god Hapi, a deity of the annual Nile flood, which was crucial for their agriculture and survival. Hapi was celebrated for bringing in fertility and abundance, and rituals and offerings were made to ensure the flood success. So, more or less, Hapi was the one in charge of the floods, and the floods were those things which brought life. Not only did it give life to the Egyptians, they drank it for water, they ate the fish of it, uh, and all they watered their crops, which they grew and ate. But also the flooding rejuvenated the land. Every year the waters would overflow its banks in the rainy season, and all the fertility of the river would be passed along to all of the land to be able to grow and to support life. And so eventually, as uh, all these uh, groups who worship the creation more than the creator, they began to associate that river with a blessing. So they made a god. They worshiped the river and what it could do for them instead of the God who created the sun, moon, stars, oceans, rivers. Uh, Instead of that, they worshiped the creation rather than the creator who is blessed forever. So you see, God pours out his first plague upon the very source of their life, the source of their drinking water, the fertility of their fields, the ability um, to then pass water on through to crops so that they can grow to maturity, the fish which they ate of the river, and all of the other things in the river which they considered to be deities, all died. The river stank. So what had happened with the rod becoming a serpent and swallowing the serpents of the magicians and sorcerers was coming to pass. That same rod which had overcome their serpents was now smote upon the river, and it poisoned the river. That serpent poisoned the river which they revered as a god. And the plague was upon the people. And it wasn't on for an hour or for a day or for a week. It was on for 7 full days. 7 days the land stank, and the waters of the river were blood, and the fish that were therein died, and there was no water to drink from that river in the land. So you see, God had struck at the heart with the first of his plagues. He struck at the very heart of Egypt, which is its wondrous river, the Nile. And so the magicians were able to reproduce this plague. And it says the magicians in verse 22a, first part of that verse, it says, and the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. This word enchantment, by the way, is an interesting word, as it means a secret incantation. So one would think they had gotten some kind of a vessel of water and put it before Pharaoh. They did their incantations and it turned to blood. And so again, we say, how does it happen? The same 3 options that I mentioned before are true. Either it was some sleight of hand by them, they put some item in the water that made it appear as blood. It was a deed done by Satan to show, I guess, that there was opposition, or it was God who allowed the water to become blood. And what does this do? Well, this hardens Pharaoh's heart. This is nothing. I know that you did this, but my magicians can do the same. Notice that the magicians never are asked to remove the plague that was put down. If I were Pharaoh, that would be what I would want. So if you have an incantation to turn water into blood, then give me the incantation that turns blood to water again. You notice how they never ask this of their magicians? Interesting how things work, right? Deep down, who knows what was in the heart of Pharaoh, but we know this: his heart was hardened, because we read in verse 22, the latter half, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened, neither did he hearken unto them, as the Lord had said. And Pharaoh turned and went to his house, neither did he set his heart to this also. And all the Egyptians digged round about the river for water to drink, for they could not drink of the water of the river. And 7 days were fulfilled after that the Lord had smitten the river. You can just see the desperation in the hearts of the people. These people were not wealthy. They went to the river as their source of water and food and so much of their lives. But now they resorted to digging around to try to get some groundwater to come up to be able to drink, to be able to hopefully sift it through and be able to get the scum and the dirt out of it so that they could drink it. Because the waters of the river and any vessel that had been dipped into the river and taken away had become blood. It didn't matter whether it was a vessel of wood or vessel of stone. If it had been dipped in the river, when the river was turned to blood, that turned to blood as well. So the people were in a hard place. And Pharaoh is not such a good leader now, is he? Now let's close with this thought about the hardening of his heart. So what are some of the signs of a heart that is hardened? Well, here's the first, that Pharaoh did not hearken unto Jehovah's words. It says he did not listen to them. God said, Pharaoh will not listen to you. He will not hear you on this thing. And so he had a chance when the first of the plagues were mentioned to him to fall down and admit his failure and plead with God not to bring the judgments upon the land, that he would indeed let the people go. He did not do that. He did not hear God. Secondly, he ignored the obvious signs of the hand of God. What signs were they? Well, think of these are superstitious people. The sign of Moses' rod swallowing the serpents, the rods that have been turned into serpents of the magicians and sorcerers. That's one sign. But the other sign of the river being turned into blood, the river which they worshiped, was now death. It was blood. It was undrinkable. It couldn't support life. So these were obvious signs. But you know what Pharaoh did? He turned himself and he went into his home. He just turned away from it, pretended that it didn't matter. It didn't happen, whatever. He was just going to be oblivious to it. That's the second sign of a hardened heart. The third sign, he refused to repent. So what was needed? Well, when he saw this great sign worked on the river that they worshiped by the rod that had become a serpent and had swallowed the magicians and sorcerers' rods, he should have confessed his sin, and he should have fallen down before God and said, I should have obeyed your servant Moses. I should have let them go in the beginning. Lord, please remove this plague from us and go worship as you see fit. But you see, a hardened heart won't do that. A hardened heart refuses to turn. And I wonder, do we suffer from a hardened heart? Well, we can have a look and see if the signs are in us. Do we listen to the words of God? Do we hear them and take them to heart? And do we obey them? That's a sign of a heart that is tender toward God. Do we not ignore the signs that things are wrong, that things are going astray? Or do we prefer to block everything out and to be oblivious to everything that's happening around us? If our hearts are turned toward God and they are tender, then He only needs to just touch us very lightly, and we feel that need, and we look to turn to come back to God. And of course, lastly, are we quick to return to Him when we stiffen up and He brings a judgment, a punishment upon us? Are we quick to turn and to go back into the way and seek His forgiveness? You know, First John, we're told that if we sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. And he's able and willing to forgive our sins and to cleanse us from all our unrighteousness. A tender-hearted person will turn back to God and will say, "Oh, I have sinned. Forgive me. Have mercy on me." And of course, God will pour His mercy out. Well, we hope that we're not hard-hearted. We hope that we have a tender heart toward God. Listen to Him. Listen to His words. Heed His commands and His guidance. And most importantly, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ. Follow Him with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. Well, we appreciate you coming in for tonight's lesson. Hope that you've received something out of this. I certainly have in studying it, but I hope it's translated across to you, of course. But you're more than welcome to visit with us at Bethesda Baptist Church. We meet at the Morayfield East State School at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning and again at 5 p.m. Sunday evening. We're studying through the book of Ephesians. And we're in that book in both of these services, and we'd like for you to come along if you can. If you can't, you're not close enough, you don't have the ability to do so, then fear not. We'll be here for you next Thursday night studying chapter 8 of the book of Exodus, and we hope that you'll join us there. And until then, well, God bless you all, and good night.